This video is sponsored by 1Password. This is the Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV. These are the incredible new cameras that everyone is really hyped about on this particular phone. And these cameras are also the phone's massive fail. On this journey of being a lifelong iPhone user who is trying to switch away to Android after just getting a bit bored of the iPhone after all of these years, and like many Android flagships that I've seen over the past couple of years, you sometimes come across these flagship features that make a particular phone better than all of the others if that feature is, of course, something that's valuable to you. So we've had 120 watt fast charging from the latest Xiaomi phones, which charge from empty to full in a matter of minutes. There are 10 times telephoto lenses that let you zoom right into 100 times using digital zoom on the latest Samsung S21 and S22 Ultra phones. There is of course the Pixel 6 and its voice features like dictation and the assistant features that will answer and make your phone calls for you. And then there are the camera features on this Sony Xperia phone. So for pretty much all other cameras built into phones, you're going to get a 0.5 ultra wide, a 1x standard, and a 3, maybe a 5, or maybe a 10 times telephoto lens. But the problem with that setup is that when you do any sort of zooming outside of the 0.5, the 1, 3, 5 or 10 times ranges, the phone is adding digital zoom to your picture, which is just the same as taking like an existing picture that you've taken and stretching it to make it bigger. And the more you zoom in, the more you stretch it, the bigger the pixels become, until ultimately pixels become blotchy and you can't really tell what's what. Now this also causes other problems, like on the OnePlus 10 Pro that I tested recently, where you zoom in and out, so you can actually physically see when it switches camera because the color science between those two lenses was completely off. Now this is where the Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV has its flagship features, because what they've tried to do with this phone is take one of these, a A-series Pro flagship camera with an optical zoom lens on it, and fit one into this tiny body of a smartphone. So that is the flagship feature of this phone, but does it actually make for a good phone? And for me as an iPhone user, do these benefits actually make me want to switch away from an iPhone to the Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV? And right up, the answer is, my God, no. Like, no, not in a million years, no. And if you read into what I've titled this video, it probably does give it away. But as I already hear you shouting from like where you are, Pete, I knew you weren't gonna switch. Just hold your horses a minute. So first, I'm gonna run through what's been good about switching to this phone for the last couple of weeks, and then explain why there is a massive problem with this phone that nobody else seems to be talking about. None of the reviewers who got early access to this phone have mentioned it. And I just have this suspicion that I can only imagine that Sony told them they weren't allowed to talk about it in their videos because it would just destroy the sales of this phone. So quick shout out first to the long-term sponsor on this channel, 1Password. There is going to be a link down below to get 50% off of their families or a personal subscription. And so if you aren't already using a password manager, or your password manager just sucks, jump on that offer. I really highly recommend it. It is honestly and literally the very first app I install on every new phone. I'm literally surrounded by phones right now. It's you know, fun job. So it's so much easier to reinstall and sign into all of the apps and all the websites that I actually use. So the good thing about this phone is the screen, the audio, and the cameras. For the most part, we have a 4K HDR OLED display running at 120 Hz and with no notches. So this gives you one of the best viewing experiences that I've seen on a mobile device. It is bright enough to see on really sunny days, except there are actually a few occasions where the auto brightness just hasn't worked for me. You can also enable creator mode when watching content and access their Bravia Core app, which gives you 5 free films and 12 months of free access. And I have to say, the content does look really great on this. So number one, a great display. Then comes audio, and we've got a kind of world's first, but not because there's quite a few Android phones that have this on there now, a 3.5mm headphone jack. Plus, it's also IP68 water resistance, even though it has this kind of user removable SIM tray and expandable storage that can easily be removed by hand, so not sure how they've done that exactly. Now there's also support for high resolution wireless audio via LDAC for those who don't have or don't want to use the wired headphones, and this can make a noticeable difference when using services like the Tidal Hi-Fi, which provides a truly uncompressed audio experience. Basically, the audio is the highest quality possible from the point of it being recorded, because you might notice with services like Spotify and maybe some other streaming services, like definitely in the days before with lower quality MP3 tracks, that some music just sounded like just muddy and you just couldn't really make any of the individual instruments in some of those tracks. Well, the best listening experience you can have in my eyes right now is with a phone that supports high resolution audio and a good pair of headphones. And Sony have shipped their XM4s along with the first few orders of these Xperia kind of Xperia 1 Mark IVs, always get the name confused, which does make this phone not as much of a bad deal as it is, of course, without the headphones. But I recently sold my old XM4s and upgraded to the Sony XM5s. Full review is already on this channel, and the quality of these headphones is incredible. It's not audiophile level where you'll pay like multiple hundreds or thousands to get like the absolute best of the best, but as far as regular people go, this is a damn good listening experience. So that is great audio. And my other favorite thing about this phone, as I alluded to earlier, is the cameras. Now this is the first time for me that I've had these like DSLR and mirrorless camera features I'm familiar with because I shoot with Sony cameras, but inside of a tiny phone. You get full 4K 120 FPS recording with audio, though you can't use the seamless zoom. You don't get image stabilization or eye autofocus while kind of shooting in that mode. This is such a good feature that just puts all of the other brands to shame right now. Like if you've tried using any form of slow motion on any other phone lately, the image quality is just, it's like shooting with a potato. It is horrendous. There is also the continuous zoom feature, which means you can go from the 16mm ultra wide all the way through to 125mm telephoto without any notable artifacts or changes in color as you switch between the lenses. Something that was blindingly obvious when doing the same test on the OnePlus 10 Pro that I tested recently. And also the knowledge that you have just over 5 times optical zoom does just give you some reassurance when shooting those things that are, you know, that little bit further away, that you're capturing all of the detail without adding any noise from that digital zoom. Now it's not a 10 times zoom like on the S21 or the S22 Ultra, but again, those are fixed lenses where everything in between it is just digitally enhanced. There is also optical image stabilization, which works pretty well to remove like micro jitters from normal like hand movements, but to be fair, did struggle somewhat whilst testing it on a boat. And the intelligent wind filtering actually does a pretty good job of removing some of the wind noise here in these recordings in a very challenging environment. So this is testing the noise isolation on the Sony Xperia phone with noise isolation switched off, if you can hear me. And this is with the intelligent wind filter switched on. Do you hear any difference? Does it sound any better? Can you hear me better? And as a photographer slash videographer, I love that you have the ability to control all of these with a very familiar Sony interface. But of course, if you're not a photographer or videographer, then you still have the same basic mode that's the same as basically most other camera phones, where the camera just chooses the best settings it thinks you need to get the shots. So those are 3 things that I do love, genuinely love about this phone. Great display, great audio, great camera. But, and there is a big but here on this Sony phone. Try not to laugh. There is one problem with this phone that removes all possibility of me, or probably anyone else for that matter, using this phone as their main phone. Before we move on to that though, I'm doing a giveaway of a brand new iPhone 13 Pro to one lucky person, and all you have to do to enter this worldwide giveaway is comment down below what tech are you looking forward to buying this year. Then once the channel hits 50,000 subscribers, we're really close now, I will post a video to announce the winner of this iPhone 13 Pro. So make sure you don't miss that video to find out if you've won, and that is literally all there is to it. So for the bad stuff, we have one thing, just one big thing, and that kind of combines like 2 or 3 things, and that is the camera, and specifically heat. Right out of the box, the very first day that I used this phone, I almost sent it back. It was a sunny day here, 30 degrees here in the UK, which is a very rare occasion, and it was my kid's sports day. So I did what any proud parent does on sports day. I snapped some photos and videos of my kid doing his thing. Now very shortly, after I started using this phone, like literally a few minutes after I started using it, I noticed that it was getting extremely warm. Now the next thing that happened was these warnings started coming up on screen, and these are warnings I'm used to seeing on some of my Sony mirrorless cameras. Like shooting 4K for too long on some of their cameras, and they will get warm and overheat to the point of like shutting down. But this is not what I expect from a phone. This is bad. This is really bad. I didn't leave it in direct sunlight. I literally got the cold phone out of my pocket and started taking some photos and shooting some short videos, and it overheated in a matter of minutes. So I put the phone in my pocket to let it cool down, and ended up having to take it out of my pocket a few minutes later, as it was legitimately too hot to carry. It was too hot to hold in my hands. So I had to put this down on the ground in the shade and just let it cool down by itself for a while. A phone, like really, with a phone, it's pretty much as bad as it can get without it become like the next Samsung exploding battery like calamity that was. And actually, if you're watching this now and some time has passed and you have a Sony Xperia like 1 Mark IV, please let me know and let all of us know in the comments down below whether this is still affecting you or if they managed to somehow resolve this with an update, because I don't really see how they can. It seems like a physical hardware issue to me. But either way, I and everyone watching this video would love to know if it's getting better over time. But the reason you want to buy this phone is for what? It's for these damn cameras. So the fact that the biggest selling feature of this phone is also a massive fail, it's unforgivable. And all the whilst this was happening, like my son's sports day was going on, and the only thing I could rely on was my very bad memory or my wife's iPhone, which was working flawlessly and wasn't even warm to the touch, let alone overheating. And it's not just limited to the cameras with the heating issues, because I just find on day-to-day usage of this phone, it's noticeably hot at times. Like even with very light usage, just browsing the web and checking my email, it didn't become uncomfortably hot, but it was very noticeable when holding it. And then of course, on these hot days, you don't really stand a chance. Like basically, don't leave this phone out in the sun ever. It warms up so quickly and takes a while to cool back down again. And for me, it wouldn't normally be a problem. It's like very rare that we see weather above 20 degrees here in the UK, but we're currently on our 3rd week of 30-degree temperatures, and none of my other phones, no, the iPhones, the Samsungs, the Pixels, none of them are struggling to the point of being too hot to use, and definitely not too hot to operate unless you like leave them out in direct sunlight for too long. And the heating issue then goes hand in hand with the battery, because of course when the device heats up, they're not being very efficient, and when a phone is feeling like really warm in my hands, all it's telling me is that it's really sucking up power to do whatever the thing it is that you're trying to do at the time. Now I know we've got the Snapdragon chip in here, which is really efficient with its power usage, but there also seems to be a significant lack of cooling. Like there's no way to extract the heat away from this phone, which is just why I think this whole phone heats up like an oven. So I think they've got a really big challenge to actually fix this problem. I feel it's definitely more of a hardware issue than like this software feature. So even though we've got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in this phone, and I'm getting around about kind of 4 hours of screen on time, with this phone just warming up, it just seems to sap the battery life so much faster. And so it's probably not helped, of course, by the warm days that we've got here, or the fact this phone gets warm when doing almost anything, but it's been a real struggle to get through the day with this phone, whereas with other phones it just hasn't been. Now, to be fair, that is with 120Hz enabled on the 4K display, but that's not much different to using full resolution on 120Hz or the S22 Ultra or the Pixel or the iPhone or any of those things that I felt performed so much better. Now I totally get what everyone means when talking about like their perfect phone. The screen from one phone, the cameras from another, the voice technology from another, all combined to make this perfect phone. So speaking of which, what would your perfect combination of phones be? Like, genuinely interested to know. Let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, if you want to see more about the Sony XM5s and how awesome they are, then check this one out. Or to learn more about 1Password, then it's this one or one of the other ones. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye-bye.